Having done pediatrics for like 19 years, in my experience, sleep is one of the fastest ways to make loving parents feel like they're doing something wrong. And if you have ever wondered, am I damaging my kid? Why does it feel so hard even when I'm trying to do everything right? Then this episode of All About Sleep and Sleep Training is for you. I'm Dr. Ellie. My practice is Middle Path Integrative Pediatrics. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. If you're in and around the area and you need a holistic physician, then definitely look me up, middlepathintegrativePediatrics.com. I'm happy to help you. But let's dive right into sleep. Okay, so a couple things kind of off the bat, you guys. Sleep training is not something that is mandatory, okay? It's a tool. It's not a test of how much you love your kids or anything like that. I want to just make sure that you guys have like the calm, balanced guidance that's helpful and nothing that's like causing fear or extremes. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Okay, so what the heck is sleep training? What does it even mean? Okay, so if you strip away like everything on the internet, all the noise, everything on Instagram, basically it's just simply means helping your child to learn to fall asleep with less assistance over time and at a pace that feels right and safe for your family. Okay, so you're not trying to stress yourself out or your kids out. Okay, we just want to help assist them to know, like, hey, falling asleep is safe and like I can do it myself and it's perfectly fine. And one of the key points I want to just make is falling asleep independently. It does by no means mean being abandoned. And I think a lot of people understandably are really scared about that. Like, oh my goodness, you know, my kid might have some feelings about sleeping independently. Maybe I'm abandoning them. Maybe I'm a bad mom or dad or grandma. And that's not the case. And it, again, not mandatory. We don't have to do sleep training, but if it's something that you want to do and you want to help your child, you know, feel like they can sleep by themselves over time, you're not abandoning them. You're helping them build skills to like soothe and learn to sleep. Another couple things that's a key point. Attachment. A lot of people are really worried, you know, like, oh my goodness, I'm going to try and do some sleep training and now my kiddo is not going to be attached to me anymore. Or they're going to just feel like I don't love them or we don't have like a good bond. But you guys, remember the whole day that you're with your kids, not just those few minutes of bedtime. That's what's really building attachment. So I don't think this is something to really get too worried about. Your kids are going to bond to you. They're going to love you. They're definitely going to be attached to you with all that time that you're spending with them throughout the day, doing caring activities, playing with them, feeding them, changing them. All of that stuff is building attachment, body wearing, carrying, all of those things. So it's not just the sleep that is causing the attachment. Another thing to remember, and I think this is like even quoted from the Sleep Foundation, but basically consolidated sleep, it supports emotional regulation and development. So if we're having good sleep, if we're getting good rest, if we're able to kind of relax our bodies and have good, you know, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axes, that all helps with emotional regulation and also our development. So, you know, in kids, typically this is going to be, and we'll just say adults too, because let's be honest, if I haven't slept well, I may not be that emotionally regulated. But, you know, you might see in kids like more big feelings, more irritability in the daytime. They might not be able to learn as well. They might not want to go to school. They might be fussy getting ready in the morning. It really affects all impacts of life. It affects our immune system, it affects our gut health. So sleep is a really good foundation for all of that. All right, I just want to like touch on wake windows because I get questions about like what this is even. So let's just talk about it. So what are wake windows? Wake windows just simply are the time that your baby can comfortably stay awake before their body starts getting stressed out and releasing stress hormones like cortisol. So when your body's stressed out, basically what happens is your adrenal glands release things like cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. Well, you can imagine if you've got that coursing through your body, it's pretty hard to fall asleep because now your body feels like it's trying to run away from a bear. And typically I see this show up as when kids are like overtired and we've just missed their sleep window. Wake windows, we don't want to be like overly regulated where we're kind of like stressed about every minute or anything like that, but just keeping an eye on them by like 15 or 20 minutes, making sure your kids aren't getting overtired. And then, if they are, then sometimes sleep training can be a lot harder because kids are just so tired that they can't, settle and all of that. So just something to keep in mind. Okay. So what are kind of age appropriate wake windows? I'll run through the list, but again, these are guidelines, so don't feel like overly strict. But in general, at like 4 to 5 months old, the wake windows are about 1.5 hours to 2.25 hours. 6 to 7 months is about 2 to 3 hours. And then 8 to 10 months is like 2.75 to 3.5 hours. And 11 to 14 months is around 3 to 4 hours. Toddlers, 4 to 6, just depending on like their naps. So that gets like a little tricky depending on if it's like an older toddler who's like dropping a nap or something like that. But those are the general guidelines. And you guys, I just want to make sure we talked about this just a little bit before, but with emotional regulation, when kids are like outside of their wake window and it's just been too long and they're overtired, they're really just crying because their nervous system is just flooded with the chemicals like the adrenaline and the noradrenaline. So it takes a lot to kind of settle them at that point. But they're definitely not just like, I know you guys don't think this, but like being stubborn or something like that. So just know it's all coming from those hormones in the brain. So common wake window mistakes. Okay, so sometimes people will try to like stretch the wake time to build up like sleep pressure. So meaning like, my goodness, maybe if I wait to 3.5 hours for a young infant, then they'll be so tired they'll fall asleep. That usually doesn't work because like I said, their chemicals in their brain are completely flooded. They're like high adrenaline. They're just fussy. They can't even figure out how to settle. And it just takes like a lot more to kind of figure it all out. Another thing that can happen sometimes is people will confuse boredom cues with sleep cues. And I know this is a little trickier in younger infants, but sleep cues would be like yawning, eyes closing, snuggling in, starting to look a little drowsy or something like that. But you might see things like boredom, especially in like older infant or older toddlers where they're just like kind of like need to play a little or interact. And so if you feel like you might be getting that confused, then just kind of look into the sleep cues a little more and see what your baby does when they're tired and make sure that you're not misidentifying. Along the lines of getting overtired, sometimes skipping naps can also do that. I know obviously there are times where it's really hard, you guys. I'm not saying like you can never skip a nap. Obviously, you have to go to the hospital, heaven forbid. You have to like, I don't know, go pick up your older kid because they're sick, whatever, things do happen. But in general, just trying to like skip a nap too soon, that can really cause kids to be overtired and have a hard time sleeping even at nighttime. Another thing to think about too, super briefly, is just digestion, food, all of that. We'll talk more about it later or maybe even in a different episode, but obviously nutrition plays into this. So if we're not able to make good melatonin in our brains and all of that to kind of help us sleep because we're not eating healthy foods, and foods that help with that would be like good healthy protein, healthy fats, vegetables, fruits. In older kids, sometimes we'll do some good vitamins and things like that. That also helps you sleep. So you may notice like if you go to like a kid's party or something and their digestion's just a bit off and they've digested some sugar or heaven forbid some food dyes and things like that, they may not sleep as well that night. And so it's not to say never go to a party, but also manage your expectations that evening because things can definitely be off. And if you need more information on how to like help tiny tummies, I'll link my tiny tummies guide at the end of the episode so you guys can see that to see how we can get good nutrition to help decrease inflammation in the body of kids and toddlers and babies. Okay. Oh, and I have my sleep course. I'll link that too. Not sleep course, nutrition course for breastfeeding and for starting solids. I'll link those too. Okay. So another thing I just want to kind of chat about is like regulation before separation. So we're talking here about like having a predictable bedtime routine without being overly controlling. I wouldn't say like, okay, no, 7:30 at 7:35, it's all gone wrong. No, that doesn't have to be that strict. But in general, like we have the aim of like starting to wind down at a certain time. And this signals safety to the brain. So it signals safety to the brain, no matter what age you are, whether you're an infant, you're a toddler, an adult. I talk to this, talk to adults about this a lot too. If we're not giving ourselves some regulation to like wind down and some routines, our body may not know that it's time to go to sleep. So things that help with doing that would be kind of doing things in the same order at night. So perhaps like you're going to calm all the sensory input, like you'll dim the lights, or maybe you're doing like a nice warm bath or a baby massage with some lavender and coconut oil on their feet, assuming they're not allergic to any of those products. Maybe you're feeding before sleep, but not as the final step, you guys. We don't want to necessarily get kids in the habit of nursing to fall asleep, because then it's very difficult to get them to settle without that step. Okay, so there may be a feed, but not as the final step. Okay. Another thing that people sometimes forget is we want to put kids down while they're awake and drowsy, but not asleep. I guess I shouldn't say awake and drowsy. That's a bit confusing. While they're drowsy, but still not asleep, and not while they're fully asleep. Okay. And this is very common thing that happens is people get worried because as soon as they put their baby down, then they wake up again. Okay. And so what's usually going on with this is the brain basically has this whole thing where while you're sleeping, it just kind of wakes you up a little bit, and you sort of like look around your environment and you make sure that everything is safe, everything's where it should be, like you're still in your bed, nothing has changed, there's no intruders or anything like that. And assuming everything's fine, you won't even remember that wake up and you'll just fall back to sleep. But if your body's doing its routine kind of surveillance of its environment, which it does all night long, and you wake up and something's different, like, oh my goodness, I went to bed in my bed, but now I'm in the front lawn, then you're going to wake up and you're going to be quite panicked, right? So this is the same kind of thing that's happening with infants. So if they're falling asleep, and toddlers and older kids too, if they're falling asleep in your arms while breastfeeding, and then, just as an example, and then you put them down in their, bassinet or crib or whatever you may have, and they're like asleep, they're going to just kind of like have a little wake up where they look around and their body's going to realize, I am not safe. I am not in the same spot. So it's very important to kind of, as much as possible, keep the sleep happening in the spot that you want them to sleep in. So trying to do it in a lot of different environments can be problematic because we have this response where we wake up. So we put them down while drowsy, but not fully asleep. And then we're going to work on some warm consistency and rhythm to regulate the vagus nerve. So again, that's all of those routine things that we do. So maybe the bath, and maybe the lotion, and maybe the massage, and maybe some white noise, and the darkness, and setting the house just a touch cooler, not super cold for infants, but we don't want it hot and things like that. All right, let's talk about now your baby, you've done all that and your baby wakes up and they're crying or they're upset. So we want to do some check-ins. Okay. Obviously want to make sure that they're safe and they're okay. But remember, it's not all about just making sure they 100% stop crying right away, because that usually can create some panic or feelings of like, I'm not safe because now my mom or my dad is really worried about me, So we don't want to do this in a panicking kind of way. We want to just do it in a check-in kind of way, letting your child know, I'm still here for you. You're safe. You're okay. You can sleep by yourself. It's going to be fine. Okay. So what does this look like? So let's say you're trying to kind of do some sleep training. Your kid's, at least 2 months old, you guys. Sometimes even 4 to 5 months is a better time to do this, but it depends on everyone's family situation, but not before 2 months. So you put them down and you're checking in on them because they are waking up like 3 minutes later. So you'll just go in at like maybe 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and you're going to just do like some brief, calm, very chill reassurance. Okay. So for example, the first time they wake up, you might want to like cuddle them and talk to them and say like, everything's fine. You're safe. When they start to get drowsy again, you'll put them back down and then you'll walk out. Okay. And then let's say a few minutes later, maybe like 5 minutes, they've started to kind of wake up again. Then you're going to go in and try not to pick them up this time, but you could talk to them. You could rock them with a hand. You could pet their forehead, let them know I'm here, you're safe, everything's fine. Let's go back to sleep. And when they're getting a little drowsy, you're going to leave. Okay. The next time you come in, let's say they're crying or what have you, you're going to try not to touch them, and you're going to talk to them and say, like, you're safe, everything's good, and you're going to let them calm. Okay. And then maybe the last time they wake up and they're just got, like some coos or some sounds, then you're just going to look from the door and make sure they're fine. And you'll just kind of repeat that process until your kiddos start to learn that, hey, I'm okay. I can sleep by myself. And I do recommend just doing, if there's one wake up in the night that's really hard for you, let's say it's like a 3 a.m. and your kid is 9 months old and they don't need to eat, maybe just pick that one and try to see if you can work on that one first. So you're not doing everything all at once. Okay. Other things just to make sure you do or not do. You want to try to let them know, hey, I love you. It's time for sleep. You're safe. Try not to pick up unless it's like the first time, the pre-planned, or they're sick or something like that, which we'll talk about that. But don't add any new kind of stimulation. So we don't want to be like, okay, oh my goodness, what do we do? Turn on the music, turn on the fan. I'm going to add I don't know. I'm going to pick you up now and talk to you and all of this. This kind of gets the system going more than it does calm it down. So we don't want to overdo. Another thing to do is try not to stay too long. And I'm not talking about not letting your baby, know that they're safe and loved and all of that. But if you're in there for an hour or you're sleeping on the floor, that may be a sign that either you're not ready as a parent to do sleep training, which is very, very common and perfectly fine. You do not have to do sleep training. Or your child's just not ready and you might want to just kind of reset in a couple of weeks. Okay. So if you're in there for like a couple of minutes, great. If it's going all night, that might be too long that you're in the room. We also just want to make sure we're not changing the plan mid-cry, because this is very stressful. This is not, I don't want to make light of this. This isn't something that's easy, it's simple, but it's not easy. And it doesn't mean that every child doesn't have some kind of sleep problem. There are kids that really do. However, most kids, it's kind of more the sleep training that's needed. But we don't want to just kind of panic because they're crying. Your child will survive crying, I promise. It's uncomfortable. It's very stressful. The hormones in your body will just go crazy. Okay. But as much as possible, we really want to try and keep with those steps that are calm and soothing and, we're not reverting to like adding new stimulation or picking them up. Okay. I do want to talk just briefly about when to pause sleep training or when to maybe not do it. If at any point your kid is sick, they have fevers, they're ill, they have coughs, they have colds, they're not drinking well, this is not the time to do any kind of sleep training. This is when, it's best to just offer comfort to help them get through their illness. They need to know that you're there for them and all of that. If we're having really bad reflux or something like that, anything that's causing them pain, they're not feeding well through the night, maybe they're losing weight, so we just need to feed them more, then we don't want to do sleep training at that time either, because that could be distressing for your child and obviously for you guys too. The other time I recommend people just take a break is when things have just gotten to the point that you're panicking, you yourself are stressed out, it's just overwhelming, it's too much. Just stop, take a pause. Nothing bad will happen to your child, I promise, okay? Most likely they're getting the amount of sleep they need. It's just that it's disruptive to your family in some cases. And again, not everyone feels the need to do any sleep training, and many people are fine with that. And that is completely fine too. It's just what works for you guys. Okay. But if you're getting to the point where you're so escalated and panicked, that is not the time to do sleep training. I would just take a break from it, maybe go hire a babysitter for an hour, take yourself on a walk, whatever it may be, and just sort of regroup for a couple of weeks. And then maybe when you're ready and feeling more settled in yourself, you can try again. But trying to do it when you're really stressed out, there's a word called co-regulation. So oftentimes your child will feel your panic or stress. And so if you're getting stressed, they'll feel that too. And then it's just harder to have your your kids' sleep. That all said, and I hope this is all helpful, if you're not sure whether sleep training is appropriate for your kid, I'd love to get to know you. I'd love to support you. If you'd like to find out if my practice is right for you and your child, that's exactly what my complimentary meet and greet page is for. Just go to middlepathintegrativepediatrics.com, smash that book a meet and greet button, and I will definitely talk to you more about sleep or any other concerns that you guys are having with your kids. And keep me posted. If this episode was helpful, send me a DM on Instagram or anything like that, and definitely like, subscribe, share with other parents where you would find this to be helpful for them. All right, I'm Dr. Ellie. My practice is Middle Path Integrative Pediatrics. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm wishing you well. Bye, guys.